Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burckhardt. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. It is so great to be back. Welcome to Season 2 of Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burckhardt. I'm so excited for this coming year. We're going to have some amazing guests. We already have the first one lined up for today's episode, L.M. Wilson. She is a best-selling romance author. She's got some great stories for you, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. I just have to mention... If you ever read my blogs, you know I'm always joking around about, I think that Murphy, who created Murphy's Law, must seriously hate me. Because if you don't know, Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And that seems to be the basic theme of my entire life. Because at the end of the rebroadcast last week of Sonali Dave's interview, I was talking about how I was so looking forward to season 2, that we were going to have great guests, we were going to have better sound quality. And of course, I jinxed myself on that because this very first interview with L.M. Wilson, we had so many sound issues. It's just not even funny. Because of the kind of internet provider that she has, there was some weird feedback between my equipment and her broadcast signal. And you can hear it here. I tried in post to get most of the interference out, but there's like this air popping sound. I tried to minimize it, but it's there and I know it's annoying. I am so sorry. Because of the way we had to do the interview in my computer program, it sounds very canned and tinned, and I am sorry. It's like going back to my very first episodes about how they sounded, and I'm so sorry for that. I will try to figure out going forward if I have a guest who is in a remote area and has a different kind of setup that I'm used to dealing with. We will get together ahead of time and figure this stuff out so this doesn't happen again. I promise you. So if you can forgive me for the sound quality on just this episode, I will make sure that it doesn't happen again. But the great thing is, the sound quality does not take away from the fact that this was a wonderful interview. It was so much fun. She's so vivacious. You are really going to love hearing what L.M. Wilson has to say about her incredible family of writers, and her own books. So let's not take any more time. Let's welcome L.M. Wilson to the show. The one thing that I always do with all of my interviews, I always start out with asking people to explain how we know each other, because almost everybody that I've interviewed up till now is a personal friend of mine. But you and I do not know each other.
No, we didn't.
So this is fun for me because I love getting to meet new authors, and I get to learn about you along with my audience. So this will be really fun for me. I'm going to start out with having you tell everybody just a little bit about who you are.
Okay. So I'm Australian born, however, my family is all Scottish.
That's cool.
I can talk about the books all day, no interruptions, but the moment I have to talk about myself, that's it.
Well, I think that's pretty typical for writers because we are so used to being the ones telling the stories about other characters. We don't talk about ourselves. And whenever we have to do that, it kind of like puts us on the spot.
But to be honest, I think us as writers, we're not as interesting as the characters we create. My entire family grew up reading books rather than watching TV. So the love for books is genetic.
That's nice.
First book I ever read was Children of Cherry Tree Farm by Enid Blyton. And the moment I read that book, I wanted to write my own.
That's pretty impressive that it would have that kind of effect on you, that there's one book that you can name for that.
I was 5.
Wow.
I started writing when I was 14, and most of the stuff that I wrote when I was 14 was all angsty poems and terrible stuff. When I was 16, I had my first publishing deal.
Oh, nice.
Under my real name, not a pen name.
That had to be a great experience to be a teenager and see your writing being published.
It was wonderful, to be honest. It was what gave me the push to realize that just because life isn't always easy doesn't mean you can't achieve your dreams.
That's a nice message.
It was a
So
hard lesson to learn.
where did you go from that?
After that, I started writing for a romance company. I'm not really sure what it's called in other areas of the world, but here in Australia, it's called Mills and Boons.
Hmm.
And I wrote originally for the After Dark genre, and I was writing under different pen names. So none of the books were ever by the same pen name, but I'd get paid for them. So it was kind of fun to start with.
That does sound like fun.
I actually mixed and matched my animal names.
Oh, nice.
So one of my pen names is Yalu Taylors.
Hmm.
That pen name had a very rocky start coming into the indie community. I was actually told by another author that I should cut my fingers off and never write again.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a really lovely start to an indie community,
That is harsh.
but it didn't stop me.
Good. That kind of feedback usually just makes me want to do something more whenever I get comments like that.
It does. It makes me want to prove them wrong.
Exactly.
And when I started branching out from the science fiction style romance, I decided to dip my toes into paranormal romance. And I started writing under my name, L.M. Wilson.
So, what is your favorite book that you have written so far?
My favorite book would have to be, that's a hard one. Actually, I think, yeah, my favorite one would have to be, no, I'm changing my mind again. I can't choose.
It's kind of like choosing between your children. It's like,
It
which child
is.
do you love the most?
I love all my books because each book has something that's missing in my own life.
Hmm.
Each book has something that people can read and grasp onto. It has a message in it that I really can't describe it. Everyone who's ever read them has said they love them.
That's the one thing. Okay, I've been reading the one from the Bounty Hunter series. I started with the first one, The Last of the Spirit Drakes. And I have to tell you, there's one thing that you do in this book that I absolutely want to thank you for is the fact that you have the glossary at the front. I love when people do this, especially since you're writing from an Aussie English perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, especially Americans who had never spoken to anybody who is British or Australian or from New Zealand or India, and don't realize that there is separate versions of English. And you can say one thing in American English that will mean something completely different in another version of English.
And
Or
some
there's
phrases that we use mean something completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't realize this. So you having that glossary in the front that explains like some of the differences, especially I remember I was surprised to find that you have instead of Monday to Friday, you have Monday through Friday. And it was really nice to have that information before I started the book because it made some of the things in there make so much more sense to me. Because I would have stopped and thought, why did she phrase it like that? But then because I read that glossary and I was reading it, it didn't stop me in the story to wonder about it because I knew why.
I'm sorry, but my son has left his alarm on. I need to turn that
Oh,
off.
now I hear it.
I'm home alone because I'm a mum of 6 kids.
Uh-huh.
Everybody kind of goes, wow, 6. But usually I have no sounds except for the bird in the
Mhm.
background.
Yeah, we've had
I have
experience with birds in the podcast.
a I have a Burke parrot, so he's a little noisy sometimes. He sits in the kitchen, so he's usually pretty quiet this time of the day when there's nobody else around.
Oh, and there is one section of your book that I actually snort laughed. It was the line, "No eye humping the sexy Hulk." when when I read that, I actually snorted, and my husband was like, "What are you reading?" And I read him the line, and he kind of was like, "Okay, I get it. I see why you laugh."
I tell you what, if you like the line from that one, you'll love reading Split Shift.
Split shift. So what's that one about?
Split Shift is about a girl shifter who kind of doesn't shift in the typical way. She can't shift into animals. She shifts into other people,
Oh, wow.
particularly her mates.
That would be interesting. Is that
That's not the worst part.
Oh, what is?
When she shifts into them, they shift into her.
Oh, that's a nice twist.
It makes for some very interesting and comedic scenes.
I would imagine. So is that part of a series?
Split Shift is book one of Abaddon Academy, and Spirit Drakes is book one of the Supernatural Bounty Hunters.
Do you like doing standalones or do you prefer to do a series?
I like doing trilogies, but unfortunately, it doesn't always work out to be a trilogy.
Yeah.
Sometimes they end up being standalones, which About to Break, the book that's coming out soon, that book is a standalone. It was originally supposed to be a duet, but the characters decided to reach the climax a lot sooner than I expected. Trying to extend it was beyond a joke.
That's one thing that I think that a lot of people who don't write do not seem to understand, that sometimes the characters in our heads take over and the story we thought we were going to write is not what we end up writing.
Oh, I have no idea how many times I've had to throw out my plot outlines.
Mm-hmm.
I've started with something that looks brilliant. It honestly, I could probably go back to those plot outlines and create a whole new series.
Oh, yeah.
But they never turn out that way. The beginning will start out exactly like that, and then by about 500 words in, it's nothing like the original thought.
Exactly. And I've tried to explain that to people. I said, it's more like I don't write my stories. I just have a movie playing in my head and I'm transcribing what I see. And I do not direct it. It's the characters in my head that seem to direct it.
Yep.
And what I think is a great idea, a lot of times they go, we're not doing that. And they go all the way over there.
I've had to go back and rewrite scenes because the characters have tried to change them so much that they don't fit into the story anymore.
Yeah.
And when I'm sitting there trying to figure all that out, my husband goes, "What are you doing?" And it's like, I have to rewrite an entire scene. He just doesn't get it.
Well, and the thing is, when you try to explain that to people, it just kind of makes you sound crazy. And they're like, okay, sure. you're just listening to the voices in your head. Okay.
Yep. We're all a little crazy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, true. How many books do you think you have in print at the moment? Do you even know?
Not off the top of my head, no. I will look it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm keep going. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 in print.
Oh, that's very nice. So now, are these all series? Because I know you have the Drake series, you have the other one that you mentioned. I've already forgotten what it was. What's the other one?
Abaddon Academy, Split Shift.
That's it. Do you have any other books that are not in those two series?
Yes, I do. I have 2 completed series, which are Stolen Past. There's parts 1, 2, and 3, and I've done a compilation book.
Oh, nice.
So you can actually get the compilation book in print, all 3 books in the one book. I've got the Willow Runstow series. That's again a 3-book trilogy. And that's also available in a print book with all 3 books in the one book.
What are those? Are they like sci-fi romance? Are they paranormal romance?
They're both paranormal. One's vampires and the other is shifters. I also have contemporary romance. I honestly loved writing the contemporary romance, but I don't think I did very well on it.
Well, sometimes I think the things that are more imaginative, not so much reality-based, tends to bring out more creativity, where whenever there's something that's more contemporary, you get so bogged down on trying to make it realistic that it kind of hinders your creativity on it. I mean, that's personally as far as me trying to write stuff. That's what I found.
I actually found that with the contemporary book, I ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
My own life doesn't have as many twists and turns as would be required for a book to be entertaining. So I had nothing to draw on. I couldn't think of a single thing to write that could create something as entertaining as a full book. So I ended up doing a novella called Cursed in Love. Paranormal's the easiest for me to write, and I do write in first person present tense, which until a few years ago was fairly uncommon.
So now what is it about paranormal do you think makes it so easy for you?
Being able to explore different ways of seeing reality and twisting them and adding in the characters that are out of the norm. So shifters, for example, I can take a shifter and give them pretty much whatever I want, and it would change throughout the story. So a shifter could start with being able to turn into a wolf, but by the end of the story, the shifter is able to turn into a wolf, but he's also able to control an elemental power or evolve into something much more unrealistic, which means I get the freedom to write something that's never been seen before.
So now what do you have planned for your next project?
My next project is a little bit of a taboo subject. It's still a romance, paranormal, but it's called Monsters in the Dark. That's the working title at the moment. It's about the Grim Reapers.
Very cool.
So I've taken the Grim Reaper myth and I've turned it into a fantasy story that can be a little darker than what any of my other books have been so far.
That sounds interesting. I'm a big fan of dark though, so.
I've never actually written a dark before. I tried writing a dark when I wrote Willow Runstow, and this was before bully romance was a big deal. I wrote Willow Runstow, and one of the characters in it was trying to save her life by bullying her and making her seem like she wasn't as important to the main characters as what she was. And back when that first came out, bully romance was a big no-no. Everybody was saying that it was a horrible thing to do to somebody that you love.
Well, it would actually depend on the motivation, though. I mean, so if you're trying to do it for the reason of saving somebody's life, that makes it understandable.
That's what I thought too when I first wrote it. Back then, the reviews that I got were absolutely awful. But now when people pick it up and they say, oh, I didn't realize this was a bully romance. And I'm like, yeah, sorry. And they're all like, no, we love it. It's amazing how a few years can change.
I think it's amazing, though. It doesn't ever really matter what you write. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it and will find issue with it no matter what you do or say. Because I actually keep one of my reviews. My very first book that I put out has great reviews. There's not very many. There was one 3-star review that just cracked me up, and I keep a screen grab of this on my computer to remind me not to worry about bad reviews, because my books are novellas. They are advertised as novellas. They are advertised as cliffhanger stories based on the old cliffhanger short movies that used to play in theaters before the main feature back in like the 50s. Because mine are historical fiction, like Red Ryder shorts or the Lone Ranger shorts. They're just quick little westerns that end with a cliffhanger to go to the next book. The review that I got was too short, ends in a cliffhanger. Like, okay, I advertise these as novellas, as quick reads for busy people with cliffhangers based on cliffhanger movie shorts. And exactly what I advertised it as is what this guy complained about in his review. Okay, that's like buying a dictionary and complaining that it has a bunch of definitions of words. It doesn't matter what you do. Somebody is going to find something to dislike about it.
I've pretty much had the same experience. The first book that I indie published was Joy, J.O.Y. It was the first book in the Cassandra series. And the very first review that came through was devastating. To have somebody pick apart the entire book and basically write a very shortened version of it in a review was heartbreaking. But I like the bad reviews because I can learn from them.
True. You
get good reviews and they all just say, I love the book. This was my favorite character, or the twists and turns had me on the edge of my seat, those sorts of things. But they're not really helpful.
Yeah.
Not as a writer. Having the feedback say that, the pacing was too fast, or that it felt like there was a decline towards the middle of the book. Those are the sorts of things that actually help me as a writer. despite hating bad reviews, I actually love them.
Well, and I think there's a difference between getting ridiculous bad reviews and getting reviews that are thoughtful critiques.
Oh, I agree 100%. The irony is the person who read that first book reviewed the second and third books and they loved them. And the second book for that series ended up in the #1 bestseller list for Amazon for nearly 4 weeks. So I can't have been that bad.
Very nice. Do you just write full time or do you do something else as well?
Until November last year, I was also doing ghostwriting and working for another company. As of November last year, I now write full time as my own business.
Oh, nice. Congratulations on that.
It's scary.
Yeah, but that's got to be a great feeling.
It is. It means that I can dedicate all of my time when I'm not being a mum, which, let's be honest, is all the time.
Yeah.
But I can dedicate most of my time while the kids are at school to writing, which gives me the freedom to play with any story I want. And it doesn't matter if it turns out to be the best book in the world or the worst book in the world. I have more time to keep going, to keep writing, and to put it all out there. Writing really is just an experiment. You're never going to please everyone.
True. But how pleased are you with what you've put out?
There are some good books and there are some bad ones. You actually asked me before which one would be my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would have to go with Lost Among the Lies.
And is that part of one of the series?
That is the book 1 of the Godling series. It's actually the next book that I'll be working on is Lost Beneath the Truth. So after Monsters in the Dark, I'll be working on the Godling series, which hasn't had a book out since 2018, I'm afraid. But I enjoyed writing that one because it was based off the fae myth, the fairy myth. And to be able to delve into the mythology of fairies, and not just fairies, but elves and dwarves and all of the good points and bad points of the mythology, it was so much fun.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm a big fan of fae stories. I love those.
And being able to twist the story so that instead of them being just fairies, they're fairy gods.
Oh, that's cool.
That was a lot of fun to write. I think that's the reason it's my favorite out of all of them.
We already discussed what it was that influenced you into writing. It was the book that you read when you were 5.
Children of Cherry Tree Farm by Enid Blyton.
I have got to look that up because I don't know that book. I was a massive reader as a child.
All I've ever done all through school, from primary school right through to high school, even when I was doing TAFE schooling, which is after high school, all I ever did was read.
Yeah, I was like such a nerd. In junior high, I actually had this prized book that was a leather-bound edition of all of the works of Shakespeare, and I would carry it around with me at school and read it. I was tagged as such a nerd because of that. I'm sure there were other reasons too, but that did not help me.
I think I'm still a nerd because not only do I read and write books, but I also play Warhammer 40K.
And say, if you say Fortnite, I'm going to hook up with you online.
Oh, no, I don't play video games. I play tabletop games. So I play Warhammer 40K and Blood Bowl and Dungeon Bowl. And you play with other people, and I got my kids into it. You do not want to know how many models I have.
That is cool. We actually, my husband and I were talking about whenever we buy our house here in the next couple of years, we want a gaming room that has all kinds of things like that. He likes to do ship models, and have a whole wall that's just like all of his models. And God, we have got so much Star Wars and Star Trek and Marvel, and we could probably fill
it. Sounds like my dream home, only instead of models, I'd rather have Lego.
Yes, Lego. Oh my God. Okay, you'll appreciate this. I told my husband that I wanted us to start buying brown Lego blocks and just start getting as many as we can, just buy a big tub and start storing them in there. Because when we get a house, I want to build a life-size Chewy and glue it all together and stick it in our garden.
Awesome.
Yes, that is my goal in life. My end goal is to have a life-size Lego Chewy.
I bought the entire Harry Potter set just so that I had a castle that I could play in.
Oh, nice. Those are some
and my kids are all like, can I play with it? No. It's mine. Although, unfortunately, I have a little genius in my family. People laugh and joke about how having a smart kid would be great. What they don't understand is how bored they get.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter, she's 7, and she is, well, to put it bluntly, she's a math genius.
Oh, nice.
She entered a Lego competition last weekend. She won first place. She wasn't building the Lego, she was counting. So she could see in her head, and she tried to explain it to me, and I still don't fully understand it. But she could see in her head how many bricks would be required. And she built this beautiful little house, which is how she won first prize. I have no idea how she did it. My brain doesn't work like that. You give me words, no worries. I could spin it a million ways. But to see someone building from numbers in their head.
With Legos, though, that actually makes sense because they're very specific divisions in the way the bricks are built. And you can actually use Legos to teach basic math because of the way that they are set up. Because I have seen different things where people have used Legos to explain fractions and explain different percentages and things like this. So the fact that she could do it from a mathematical base actually makes sense that works with Lego.
Mm.
And I think that is so cool that she did that. That is amazing.
I just have no idea how she does it. She's loads of fun when she's not making me feel like I'm tripping. She's just so, I want to say the word entertaining. Never dull.
That's an incredible imagination on her as well.
Oh, she's not the only one of my children who have tried to write her own book. She wrote a story about a chicken. We have chickens on the farm that we live on. And one of the chickens, we called her Sifa, as in C for chicken.
Yeah.
And she wrote a little story about the chicken going on an adventure. My eldest son wrote a book. He's 19 now. He wrote a book about a pirate going on an adventure. They all seem to have a theme here. And my middle child, he is nearly 16, just about ready to get his license. Dear God, help me on that one. But he's working on a horror story, and his idol is Stephen King. He comes to me every other day asking for advice on how to make it twisted enough. And when you have a nearly 16-year-old asking you, how do you make something twisted? You got to stop and think, hang on a second, what am I thinking here?
Have the kids published any of their stuff?
My eldest son published his book, but it was through a printing press company. So it wasn't distributed outside of Australia.
Oh, okay.
He didn't do too bad. He sold 230 copies.
Nice.
So he didn't do too bad, but it was a picture book, and unfortunately I drew all the pictures.
Why?
So that it wasn't the best.
That sounds like a great project for the two of you, though. That had to be fun to do together.
It was entertaining. It was a bit of a headache, just trying to get the pictures that he saw in his head when he can't draw it at all. We're talking stick figures are the best he can do here. Mind you, he's a carpenter now, so he was drawing stick figures, and I had to try and translate the stick figures into actual pictures.
Oh, that would be so tough. So now, do you have a website?
I do. I only have a MailChimp website at the moment, and I can never remember the website address. And normally I just tell people to go to Linktree. So you give the one link, which is literally linktr.ee/LM Wilson. Nice, simple link to give people. The link will take you to literally TikTok, Facebook, website, Amazon profile, street team signups, shop front, tip an author. I like that one. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook profile, email newsletter signups. It gives you every single link of mine, including the individual books.
If there is one series that you wanted to suggest somebody start reading your books from, which series of yours would you suggest is a good place for people to start that gives them a good idea of your writing style?
Supernatural Bounty Hunters.
I have to admit, it's like I'm really liking this.
I would say start with that one because it's probably the smoothest written book. But it also has a lot of the push and pull that the other books don't have.
When do you think your next book is going to be ready to go?
Tomorrow.
Really? You're publishing tomorrow?
I can publish it tomorrow, but it's on pre-order, so it's going to be coming out on the 1st.
Oh, that's perfect. And that's going to be the day that this podcast drops. So
Fun.
what is that book that's dropping on the 1st?
A Vow to Break.
A Vow to Break. Okay. That's the one that you were telling us about. Now, give us a good synopsis of this.
This is the hard part for me because I'm not very good at giving synopsis.
Do you have the blurb?
I do.
So it's always easier just to read the blurb.
Computer right now. So, ironically enough, I like the dedication for this book because I got a little crazy. I've been going through a bit of a rough time. So I wrote a very unusual dedication.
Okay.
And the dedication is, I've run out of people to dedicate my books to. So how about this time I dedicate the books to all the new readers, returning readers, and the clairvoyants. And then I wrote, clairvoyants, please send me the winning lottery numbers. Okay. So I'm only joking. But come on, who doesn't want to win the lottery at least once in their life? And then I hope you all enjoy reading this manic, crazy story that refused to leave me alone until I wrote it all down. And that's probably the worst and best dedication I've ever written.
I love that. I think that's fantastic.
So the blurb, fighting to break a magical vow isn't easy, but maybe together we'll find a way to set ourselves free. Trina. I'm not a whiny brat. Don't ever think that. But come on. Who in their right mind would want to be with somebody they've never met, whose name is as big a mystery as the guy himself? Who would want to settle for someone who, for all I know, could be an a-hole of the worst kind? Of course, life doesn't always go your way. I know that. But here's me, nearly 18 years old, betrothed to the future alpha from birth, and no say in the matter at all. Who wouldn't complain about it? Just because some seer has a prophecy that I'm going to be the next alpha queen doesn't mean I should be locked away and kept pure. Screw that. I'm going to pull up my big girl panties and live my life my way. To hell with the consequences, to hell with the big bad wolf. This is my life, and the world will know I won't bow down to anyone.
Nice. I like that. Thank you so much for making the time to do this. I know it's so crazy trying to do the time difference between Germany and Australia, and it has been fantastic getting to talk to you about your books.
It's been fun.
Hopefully the listeners will go check out your book on the 1st.
I hope so.
So there you have it. That was my interview with Ellen Wilson. It was so much fun talking to her, and I really enjoyed reading her book, The Last of the Spirit Drakes. It was great. It was the first one in the Supernatural Bounty Hunter series. You should really go to Amazon, check out her work, give one of her books a try. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Now, we also have some other Burckhardt books news coming out. We have just come around to bringing in a new author onto the lineup for Burckhardt books. Their name is D.S. Stevens, and they write romance novels. What a perfect tie-in with Ellen Wilson, right? So be sure to check out our website, subscribe to our newsletter. We will be bringing more information as we get everything set up for D.S. Stevens to start publishing books with us. We're really looking forward to branching out into the romance genre as well. We've already got the historical fiction covered with Stephen Burckhardt. We've got thrillers covered with me that are coming up soon. We're going to have romance now with D.S. Stevens. We're really starting to branch out into a full catalog of different genres of work so that we can bring you the things that you really enjoy reading. And as far as podcast news, I just finished another interview yesterday with Western author Leroy Peters. He had some great stories to tell, and we got to talk about all of his books. He is a really prolific Western author. You should check out his books. There'll be a link in the description of this podcast along with Ellen Wilson's information. This season 2 is starting off with a bang, and I can't wait to bring you more great interviews. So you know what time it is now, folks. Thank you so much for joining me for the beginning of Season 2 with Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt. But now, you need to go forth and be happy.